So Christina, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you, and you've got I think, unique entrepreneurial journey, and so I'm excited to dive into that. But let's start with your current business, right? The soft touch laser hair removal. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm the owner of Soft Touch Laser Hair Removal. We're located in Oldsmar. We're inside of a salon loft.
Okay.
I think originally I wanted to own my own business, and we'll go into my story a little bit about the other businesses that we've done. I think this was a unique opportunity for me just because I suffered with PCOS and I had excessive hair growth throughout my pregnancies, and just naturally just my body produced extra hair that I didn't want. So the device that I ended up purchasing was a device that I didn't know of anyone in Tampa that was using it. So I would go to Miami to get my treatments done with this
Wow.
particular device.
Okay.
So I visited Miami in March for the birth of my nephew, and I went to my med spa because I was in town. And I came back and I had taken a photo of the laser and the laser company, and it's Alma, and it's called the Soprano Ice Platinum. And I reached out to the rep, and he's wonderful. He actually lives in Lakeland, and he called me right away. We met at a Starbucks like 2 days later, and another 3 days later, I made the purchase.
Wow.
And so it just happened very quickly, but I think it was meant to be.
How long had you been seeking like laser hair removal treatment, but prior to that?
So I've been doing laser hair removal as a client for the last about 20 years.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had some really good results in certain areas. I then had 3 children. So between pregnancy hormones and just aging, there's other areas that are a little more stubborn, especially like in the facial area.
Okay.
So I definitely had to continue some treatments and do some touch ups. And I think the biggest misconception is laser hair removal. It should be called laser hair reduction, because what
Mhm.
it does is it reduces the hair drastically and it improves the condition of the skin. But I mean, unfortunately, your body does not stop producing hair.
Yeah.
Your body produces new follicles. We did kill the old ones. So that's how you see the improvement in the skin, and it's just smoother and just less irritated. But your body is it's stubborn, it's still, which is good for me as a business owner because we are still producing hair.
Yeah.
But I've had some clients that have amazing results, and they did 6 sessions and they don't have to come back. And then
Oh,
someone like
wow.
me, where my legs look amazing, my legs look super smooth, but I do have like this one little stubborn spot on my knee that I've had to treat multiple times.
Okay.
So it just depends, I think, on the person.
Yeah. Okay. And so this machine that you found, like
Mhm.
how long had you been using it as a client? Had you been using that machine? And then what is so special and unique about it that you like had to have that one?
Oh, definitely. So the Soprano Ice is the number one selling medical aesthetic device in the country, in the
Uh-huh.
world. So internationally, and I think they manufacture it in Turkey. So
Okay.
internationally, this device it sells the best compared to other lasers and other devices that I've used. So I think it's safe for all skin types. So from Nicole Kidman to Whoopi Goldberg. So on the Fitzpatrick scale, from 1 to 6, darkest being 5 or 6, we can treat all skin types.
Okay.
And it is relatively painless compared to some of the other machines. So in my early 20s, when I first started doing laser hair removal as a client, it was very painful and it
Mhm.
wasn't effective.
Oh,
So
wow.
a few years ago, when I first discovered the med spa in Miami that I would go to that had the Soprano, I was like, wow, this doesn't hurt that much. And I was noticing that my legs had significantly reduced the hair. And I was like, wait a minute, this is different. So every few years when I would be in Miami, as often as we would go, I would pop in there. So it wasn't until this year that I was like, a light bulb went off and I was like, you know what? I need to have this machine.
Mm. Okay. Okay. And what is the process like if someone's like just starting out and like, okay, I want to treat a certain area? How many visits do they need? And then I guess it depends too, like you said, like long term, like if they have to continue coming back, or if it's just, X amount of visits and then you're done.
So for first time clients that have never had laser hair removal, definitely they cannot wax or tweeze the area for at least 2 to 3 weeks before coming to see me. And I think the biggest misconception is people think you have to let your hair grow out. With waxing, you would have to let the hair grow out because they need to physically remove the hair that's on the surface.
Yeah.
With what I do, we are getting the hair underneath the surface. We are killing the follicle underneath the skin. So you have to come in shaved. So you would just shave
Oh, okay.
normally,
Okay.
shave, your legs, your underarms, your bikini, and then we just do the treatment. Depending on the area, the treatments, underarms are 50 seconds each side.
Okay.
Legs would
That's
take maybe
quick.
15 to 20
Yeah.
minutes. It's relatively quick. We use an ultrasound gel, and then the tip of the laser is -3 degrees Celsius. So it's very cold. It does heat up a little bit. And someone that has never had it before will have more follicles. So you'll feel like a little pinching sensation,
Okay.
but it's very tolerable.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so the options, so like big picture, like the options to remove hair or limit your hair, right? Shaving,
Mm-hmm.
waxing,
Waxing,
tweezing.
tweezing, electrolysis, threading.
What is threading?
So threading is I'm not sure
Oh, I
exactly.
think I've
I've had it
seen
done and
this.
it's very
Yeah, yeah.
painful. But they hold a cotton thread in
Usually like
their
on the
mouth.
eyebrows or
Yeah,
something.
and then they
Okay.
do the eyebrows. The eyebrows come out great, but I can't imagine like doing your whole
That's
face
just
or
like
your
pulling
legs.
hairs out, right? That's
Yes.
what they're doing.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty painful. But I think you had asked also how many sessions. So
Yeah.
it depends on the person. Some people have more stubborn hair than others, but we say anywhere between 4 to 6 sessions, and then some people might need maybe 10. And you come every 6 weeks, and after your first 6 sessions, I would say if you had to come back, you could push it out to maybe 12 weeks, and we would consider that like a touch up.
Okay.
So the majority of your hair has been reduced. You're looking great, but you have like 3 or 4 hairs that keep popping up, and then you would continue treating them.
Yeah. And how often would they come back? Is it every 12 weeks, or like if they have like those little spots, right? Like
So
you mentioned.
initially, it's every 6 weeks
Okay.
when you first do your 6 sessions,
Yeah.
and then beyond that, I would say it depends on
It
the client.
depends.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
it
That makes
depends on the
sense.
client. And then, like I said, there's certain factors that that can change that. So pregnancy is one thing
Sure.
that would definitely change the facial hair growth, or just I remember my hairline changed in my
Oh, yeah.
forehead,
Yeah.
and it was just it looked different. A lot of things do change for pregnant women.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the beginning and like starting your first business, because you've operated a couple different businesses now. So let's go back to the first one and like where that idea and concept and stuff came from.
So I think our pretty much our first business was my husband opened a men's clothing store in
Okay.
Miami.
Okay.
And I was pregnant with my first child. We thought this was something that I could kind of operate while he was a full-time Marine and he was also a full-time student. And I wasn't going to go back to work, and I wanted to have something where I could still be with my baby. So we opened up this clothing store, and it very quickly failed.
Yeah.
So I think we quickly realized that we didn't have the working capital to keep up with new inventory, and we kind of were stuck with the inventory that we had, and it wasn't selling. And it wasn't a good location. There was a lot of things that we quickly realized wasn't going to work with that business. But one thing led to the other, and my husband had put TVs inside the business and was selling advertising space. So that was like a light bulb moment for him where he was like, okay, well, maybe I want to do advertising. And he went down this rabbit hole of non-traditional advertising. So billboards, a billboard boat, and just like really unique ways to advertise for businesses. So then he bought a boat, and it was a billboard on the boat.
Okay.
And that quickly got replaced by a digital billboard on boats,
Sure.
which they have one that goes up and down Clearwater Beach, and he has like
Really?
a single tear every time he sees it because that was his baby, and I think that took off.
Yeah.
And so I think that was also something that was very expensive to get into, to do the digital boat. So we sold the boat that we had, and we just kind of moved on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What have you and your husband, have you guys always wanted to own a business? Like where does that drive come from?
I think both of us, we've always been serial entrepreneurs. We have tried and failed at a lot of different things, and I feel like they've always led us to something bigger, something better, and we just had to try it. So I know for me, both of my grandfathers were in real estate, and they both had different businesses. And so I think that's naturally what inspired one of my next ventures, which we'll get to, I'm sure, which was the Airbnb stuff and some of
Yeah.
the rental properties that we ended up doing.
Yeah. So you also mentioned like catering and a food truck, right? So you guys had
Right.
like into the restaurant space.
So my family in Miami, they've had a restaurant for about 20 years.
Okay.
So I think I was definitely inspired by them.
Uh,
So when my husband was going to college, we had two little kids. I had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and we got to Florida State University. And once again, I was staying home with the kids, and my husband was going off to school every day. And he came upon a fraternity that was just falling apart. It was not clean or aesthetic, and they didn't
yeah.
even have a functioning kitchen. And he was like, "Hey, what do you guys do for meals? You have about 70 guys here that live here. What are you guys doing?" And they were like, "Oh, we get McDonald's or we order pizza." And one of the, old fraternity guys comes and like grills burgers for us. And he was
Yeah.
like, "Well, my wife is an awesome cook. Like she can do your catering."
Okay.
So, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money at the time. He was a full-time college student, which was funded by the Marine Corps. He was still a Marine,
Okay.
and he got this opportunity to go back to school where they basically paid for room and board and his tuition, and he was just like a full-time student, a full-time dad.
Mm-hmm.
So this business gave us some extra income. We were cooking 4 days a week for 70 guys a day.
Wow.
And we were making some good money with it,
Yeah.
So from there, we ended up purchasing a food truck. We actually didn't purchase it, we leased it. So we've always had these really unique opportunities. And
Yeah.
I'll go back to the boat real quick because we didn't have the working capital to purchase the boat, but the guy self-financed it for us.
Okay.
So we just kind of paid him monthly until we paid it off, which
Yeah.
was really generous of him, So we didn't take out a loan. We didn't have to like rack up a credit card. It was just like a handshake deal between him and my husband, and it
Mm-hmm.
worked out really well.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up selling the boat and still making a profit.
How did
So
you meet that guy? I'm curious about that.
I want to say we met him on Craigslist,
Okay.
and he was originally from Clearwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just I think we've had a lot of serendipitous events.
Yeah, because I feel like those, like for anybody that's looking to start a business or just do something that's out of their comfort zone, like those opportunities are out there. Like if you don't have the funding or the capital to
Mhm.
do stuff like that, but you just got to be creative. You got to have connections. You got to meet people and be open to different ideas like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then things just kind of have fallen on our laps, and I've been very grateful for every opportunity. So we're doing the catering, we're rocking and rolling with that. I'm also pregnant with my third child at this time.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I'm taking care of the two girls, I'm cooking, and I would just, I didn't really have a lot of space, and I would go with them to Sam's Club every day.
Yeah.
Like every morning, that was our routine. We would wake up and we would go to Sam's Club and buy what we needed, cook for the 70 people, and do it all again the next day. So it was hard work, but I enjoyed doing it. And I
Yeah.
think the guys, the fraternity, they were very grateful to have home cooked food instead of takeout and like all this
Right.
junk that they were eating.
Yeah.
So that led my husband to want to do a food truck. So we also found this woman on Craigslist, and she said, "Hey, I have this."
What year is this? Like
This
when?
is in 2011, 2012.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So we were in Tallahassee. It's a college town.
Yeah.
The football games are,
Oh, yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And there was also a strip with a bunch of clubs and bars. So we end up leasing the food truck from this woman. She was doing waffles and crepes and stuff for carnivals.
Okay.
And so it was pretty basic, but it had enough of the items that we needed, which was a hot press because we were doing Cuban sandwiches. And I think it had like a hot skillet, or like a little just in it to be able to like fry up the pork and stuff that we were doing for the sandwiches. So we ended up doing that, and he would take it out Fridays and Saturday nights and on game day weekends.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you're just selling food out of the food truck.
Yeah, yeah. It was going well. It was again a lot of work, and then after we were only in Tallahassee for 2 years. That's the amount of time that he had left to finish his degree. And then he became an officer in the Marine Corps. So we had to go to training for that. So we had to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of gave back the food truck. Like we were done and she wanted it back. And we're like, okay, here,
There you go.
take it back. So on to the next adventure.
Yeah. So in those 2 years, you started the catering
Mm-hmm.
for the fraternity, and then bought this food truck.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for a little while, and
Yeah.
then moved on.
Yeah. And then we kind of just moved on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then let's talk about like the real estate investing piece of that. Like how did you get into that? I mean, I guess it sounds like your grandfather, like he was in big into real estate. Um, but what led you to making your first purchase, and where was your first investment purchase?
So I think, we did take a little bit of a break with entrepreneurship. We moved from Virginia to North Carolina and then
Okay.
to Michigan. The kids were young. We were definitely in the thick of parenting. My husband ended up transitioning out of the military into healthcare. So
Okay.
he was focusing on like executive education. He got his MBA. I was home with the kids. So there wasn't a lot of time to focus on entrepreneurship at this point. So we just kind of took a step back and we knew that we wanted to come back to Florida. And around this time, 3 years of being in Michigan, and it was very cold up there. And the kids were still young enough that we could move one more time. Because at this point, they had already been to 3 different schools. And it was getting to be a lot for them. So we moved to Tampa and we purchased our own home, which was in 2019. The rates were amazing. The
Hmm.
prices were amazing. So after COVID, I think things were still reasonable
Yeah.
enough that my husband was able to qualify for another type of mortgage because we had a VA loan for our personal home and
Sure.
he found an opportunity and we were able to purchase a little condo in Newport Richey.
Okay. And that became your first.
That was our
That was
first
short-term rental you did?
that was a traditional
Okay. Okay.
rental situation.
Yeah.
We had it for about 2.5 years. We had someone there. The property basically doubled in price over the next few years. So we sold it for a decent profit and we were able to move on. Then the second home that we purchased, it's up in the Panhandle. We still have that home. It's a
Yeah.
traditional rental. My husband at the time was with a company that had him going up there to Panama City
Sure.
quite often. So he tapped into that market just because Tampa had gotten a little bit overpriced and it was
Sure.
still affordable up in that
Okay.
area.
Yeah. What led you to purchase the first condo? Were you looking to for a long-term rental? Is that what you're looking for at that
At
point?
that point, yes,
Yeah.
we just, we weren't really focusing on the short-term rentals, and I don't really think there was a need.
Yeah.
So I think after this was actually in 2021, so it's a year after COVID, a lot of people were doing the travel nursing industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am not really quite sure how I found out about it, but I think I actually saw a video on YouTube about somebody talking about how he was doing this on Airbnb, and I was like, I can do this. I'm like, this is sounds easy, and I can basically do it from my phone.
Hmm.
So I was able to find some properties and I was able to set them up. And one of my first tenants was a guy. He was a nurse and he was sent here from Georgia and he stayed with me for 6 months. His company paid for it.
Yeah.
And he was at Raymond James doing the COVID vaccinations.
Okay.
So he
Yeah.
was like a project manager for a company that was handling that.
Yeah. I had a couple of one of my other friends too did the, I think Furnish Finder was like where he found
Yes,
like a
I
lot of
was
his
on
traveling.
Furnish Finder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like,
it's
yeah, he
great.
did really well because the same thing,
Hmm.
like the company paid for it and they paid, pretty well for, and you had a tenant in there for 3 months or six
Hmm.
months at a time. Right. So it was
Hmm.
from the business side of it, like it made great sense.
Yeah, and I think in every business that we've done, I've always tried to look at it from a client's perspective where these travel nurses, they're displaced. The
Yeah.
the my first tenant, he was newly engaged. His fiance or newly married, I don't remember, but
Yeah.
she couldn't come and live with him because she had to work where they were from. So, but he wanted to have a nice place for her to come and visit him on the weekends and kind of like a home away from home where he didn't want to just be in a hotel.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to cook some, his meals and just have like a nice place to rest. And he was working really long hours. So I felt, I'm still doing something good for the community where I'm providing a nice, safe, clean space and it
Hmm.
was profitable for me. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
Yeah. Why not?
Hmm.
So out of all the businesses that you've started, um, can you what are one or two lessons that you've learned that you take with you today that you took with you to open up your laser hair spa? Like what are some valuable insights that you've kept with you?
Well, I think you definitely have to be willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
And I think that you also, with that being said, you can't be scared to fail. I think in the initial businesses that we did feel like we failed and we absolutely failed. But it was okay because it took us to our next ventures. And I think we learned, okay, retail is really difficult. I
Yeah.
think we also learned the restaurant business and anything dealing with food is also very difficult. It's, there's high profit margins. It's a lot of work. It's labor intensive. It's hard staffing
Mm-hmm.
that type of business because you're going to pay minimum wage. Your staff is not going to be reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really difficult. So I think that I wanted to find something that had high profit margins and not so labor intensive. So I think the laser hair removal business it's relatively easy to hire people that are qualified to do the treatments.
Sure.
And it also has like a really nice price point where there's not a lot of expendables. Really I have my machine, which was expensive, but I have towels, ultrasound gel, and razors and
Yeah.
gloves.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
low
it.
overhead stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
low overhead.
Yeah.
The consumables are low. I think with the Airbnbs, it got to a point where the market was just so oversaturated that I couldn't really price it how I was pricing it in 2021. So 2022 and 2023, I had to kind of lower my pricing, and I was breaking even, but it wasn't really becoming worth my time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I saw the same thing. Like, so we bought our property in 2022,
Hmm.
and then we sold it beginning of 2024. So we had it for 2 years. Same thing. Like the first year we launched, I think it was like April. Like we bought it at the beginning of the year. Took us a couple months to get everything ready, and then launched in April and did really well. But we noticed a dip in 2024.
Hmm.
For I think too, like it's oversaturated, right? There's certain markets that are oversaturated, not the Airbnb market as a whole, but certain little pockets, right? Because there's restrictions. You can't
Yeah.
have
Hmm.
Airbnb short-term rentals in every city. So cities like Palm Harbor and Crystal Beach, like that
Hmm.
was a desirable area for a lot of investors, right? And it
Yeah,
became
definitely.
oversaturated. Yeah.
I think another thing that I would say is, admittedly, I get very excited in the beginning of a business because that's when you're doing all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
You're figuring things out, you're ordering stuff and you're setting things up, and it's really exciting. And then you kind of hit a plateau and it's like, wow, this is boring now. So I think with the Airbnbs, when I had 5 at one point, and furnishing them and buying the towels and buying sheets and artwork and decorating them, and that was fun.
Yeah.
That kept me busy. And then once they were like rocking and rolling, it was great, but I was bored again.
Yeah.
So I think with the laser hair removal, I'm there every day. I have 2 laser techs, so if I have other things that I need to focus on, I have support, I have help, but it gives me something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Every day there's new customers, every day there's questions, there's consultations, we're making content, we're helping people. So I think it's kind of been a sweet spot for me where the Airbnb has just kind of lost interest
Yeah.
because there wasn't much more to do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because you can automate a lot of it, and a lot of it's
Hmm.
set up and to
Which
be
is
hands
great. And
off, right?
it's still something that I'm interested in pursuing. And I think because the market is oversaturated, I think what I would want to do for our next one is make it very unique.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen some of the bachelorette pads or
Yeah. Yeah.
bachelor pads where they're just decorated maybe like all pink or
Yep.
cowboy, or just have like a really unique theme or something. I think that would be fun.
I honestly, I think that's the future. I said that like when
Hmm.
we got out of it, because there were a couple Airbnbs. Like when we travel, that's all we stay in is
Hmm.
Airbnbs. And there was one we stayed in this like tree house, and it was just like a house, little tiny home
That's
built
so
up on
cool.
stilts, right? It wasn't in a special neighborhood. They just had a very unique lot that was positioned like looking
Hmm.
over a lake. And the house itself it was like a little studio. So it was like maybe 400 square feet, nothing special. It looked like they had probably built it themselves. And one of the owners was I think an interior designer, right? So she did a great job like
Hmm.
designing the space and creating a unique place to go visit. But they had been featured in all these magazines. They had been featured on different Instagram pages. Like their Instagram was blowing up, and they were charging, I think it was like $250 a night, right? It was a small space in North
Hmm.
Carolina, but it was just very unique. and different
Yeah.
from what everyone else had,
I
you
love
know?
that. I think I've seen a lot of really cool concepts.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are creating content in some of these homes. So they'll do,
Yes.
I've seen where they do like the mirrors on the wall and it's like a
Okay.
get ready with me type of
Okay.
station where
Yeah.
I think that's so fun. You know, if I'm
Yeah.
staying in a house with my girlfriends or even with my kids and my family, I think, you know, I think they would take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
So you mentioned like failure and not being afraid to fail. A lot of people I think struggle with that. Like where
Mhm.
does that, especially when you're operating a business, because that is a lot of times they're putting everything on the line to run this business. Where do you think that um, your ability and your husband's ability to move past that fear and just do it anyway comes from?
I think also I'm very candid in our soft touch laser page. I post my failures. I think I posted
Yeah.
I was doing a session on my face and I was putting the gel and it just like spilled all over me. You know, I no one's perfect. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, you
Mm-hmm.
know, people want to curate a page that's perfect and aesthetic and it's like
Yeah.
that's not real life. You know, I think things happen. I almost spill coffee on myself every single morning. I actually spilled coffee all over my car this morning on the way here.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, and I'll post about it and I'm not ashamed to say, "Hey, I messed up." Or, you know, I failed at this or this video did terrible or this client wasn't happy. They're not going to come back. I'm pretty candid about it and I think um I'm I'm just at an age where it's like I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You can think what you want about me. I
Right.
mean,
Doesn't
no
matter.
one's perfect. I'm not going to have this perfect little life and, you know, I think
Yeah.
I'm over it in that regard.
Does that come with age, or is that just like your mindset, been your mindset for
It's
quite some
come
time?
with age.
Yeah.
It's definitely come with age.
I
Yeah.
feel like having the kids like helps that too, right? Because you just like don't have time for all the other stuff, right? Because
Right,
they
right.
take up
And
a
you
lot of
know,
time.
they take up a lot of time, but they also, you know, I think maybe I haven't shared too much about this, but like my kids are not straight A students. My
Mm-hmm.
kids haven't really excelled in any one sport. So you see people, you know, they talk about honor roll and, you know, winning this championship and winning that championship. And not everyone's kid is a superstar. They're
Right.
still great kids,
Right.
but that's not realistic. I have 3 kids and it's very difficult to give them each perfect attention to excel in the things that they wanted to do. So, but they're still good kids. That doesn't mean anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think we're still doing a great job and I think they will figure things out, you know?
Yeah. It's like you just have to give them space to allow them to
Right.
be themselves and find their way.
Right. I think just people also, you know, they only post their wins.
Right.
You
Right.
know, they
Right.
don't talk about, okay, my kid lost or my kid got in trouble in school today or hey, he didn't pass this test or whatever. So I think it's easy to think that you're not at the same level as everyone, but you know, I don't think it's about competition at this point in my age and my career, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
not competing against anyone but myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So, where can people actually, I want to ask you one more question. Since you moved all around and
Mhm.
lived in different states and cities and stuff, what is one thing that you love about Florida? Did you grow, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Miami.
Okay, you
So
grew
I
up, so you're
didn't leave. The first place I ever lived in after Miami was Tallahassee.
okay.
So I was 24, 25 years old and we went to Tallahassee and that's the first that is the first time I had left Miami.
Okay.
So it was a culture shock for me. I
Okay.
think Miami is just it's its own planet
Yeah.
almost, you know, it's like a bubble.
Yeah.
But definitely brought on a lot of growth to be able to leave Miami and just appreciate how I wanted to raise my family, you know, how I wanted to live my life. And I think in Miami, it's a melting pot of cultures and of people, but it's also a very unrealistic lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely wanted to come back to Florida, but not Miami. So we came to Tampa. I actually grew up coming to Clearwater Beach because my grandmother lives there.
Okay.
And so I always loved it here. I really did, but I didn't see it as home. I think Miami will always be home,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the growth in Tampa has been amazing. I think we moved here at the perfect time.
Yeah.
This is the longest I've lived anywhere in the last 15 years. So
Okay.
we were 3 years at a time
Yeah.
for quite a while. So we've been here now almost 6 years and I think this is home now,
Yeah.
you know.
What is it that you love about this area?
So I love that we have a major airport. I love that it's pretty affordable. You know, at the time that we bought our home, it was very affordable.
Right.
I think being close to the beach, I think being close to Orlando, I love having the suburbs of Oldsmar where I'm at, but I also love going to St. Pete and I love going to downtown Tampa. I think we
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of everything
Mm-hmm.
and it works really well for us.
Yeah, I love that because there are little pockets, right, of,
Hmm.
like Tampa, St. Pete, Dunedin, Palm Harbor. It's just like, and they're all unique in their own way.
They really are.
Yeah.
So my kids go to school in Safety Harbor, and
Okay.
I drive them there from Oldsmar every day. It's about 12 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, I could live here.
Yeah.
It's close to the water. They have little restaurants. You can drive a golf cart, and I really like that.
Yeah. Safety Harbor is a cool spot. So your business, Soft Touch Laser Hair Removal, where is it located, and where can people find more info about you?
So we have our website, softtouchlaserhairremoval.com. We also have our Instagram page, which is Soft Touch Laser Hair Removal. And we are on Tampa Road across from Mandola's Italian restaurant. So we are inside a salon loft. I think as a new business owner, this was the fastest way to get up and running. I think we quickly outgrew the space because
Mm.
it's very small,
Yeah.
but I don't need much space and I can provide a very adequate treatment. But I think my team is growing. I think our presence is growing. And I would love to have a storefront so we have a little bit more visibility. But
Sure.
I think it's a fun space. There's other people in the beauty industry there. So we get to kind of network and mingle and it's just kind of buzzing always and it's
Yeah.
it's like a fun atmosphere.
Yeah. Awesome.
Hmm.
Well, Christina, thanks for being here.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate you.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it.